Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about PlayStation 2 emulation with PCSX2, and PCSX2 just got a brand new stable update, version 2.4.0. Now this is a pretty big update, and PCSX2 has a very detailed blog post that I would recommend checking out. There's a lot of information here. And like everything we talk about, if you're interested in learning more about it, links are in the description below right at the bottom. I don't hide my sources. Anyways, here taking a look at version 2.4.0 that just released, and many people I think will be happy about it. So in version 2.4.0, there's a whole bunch of fixes, performance improvements, optimizations, new features, and even more. A whole lot of polish. And one of the first things they talk about here is the RT in RT support, where RT in RT stands for subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or render target in render target, depending on how you wanted to interpret that. At a high level here, this fixes or improves a whole bunch of different games like Battlefield 2, Big Mother Truckers, Call of Duty, Death by Degrees, Delta Force, Haunting Ground, Ghost in the Shell, and even more. Manhunt 2, I mean, there's a lot in here. For example, here is the before and after. The before has rendering issues on the right hand of the screen in this game, and well, after doesn't. And here's another before and after. You tell me which one looks better, this way or this way. On top of that, and we've talked about this one in a previous video or two, the implementation of a custom real-time clock. Certain games utilize that real-time clock for certain events, for example, holiday-exclusive Easter eggs, and now you can set that real-time clock to whatever you want. On top of that, there's been some HDR optimization. Now, the PS2 does not have HDR, but PCSX2 absolutely does, and it's one of the many, many beautiful parts about emulation, at least in my opinion. On top of that, Direct3D 11 has increased in performance by a significant margin. And I'm just scratching the surface with these updates. I mean, there's even a new upscaling fix. Here's the before, and if I move this over, here is the after. And you can see there's a lot more clarity when upscaling. For even more detail, check out that blog post. It's well written and there's a lot in there. And there's something else I wanted to highlight here, kind of a side note, but it's a very important thing. This statement right here, thanks again to former PCSX2 lead developer Refraction. Refraction is stepping away from PCSX2 after 20 years. PCSX2 has been out for about 23 years, give or take, if you can believe it. I mean, time flies. And Refraction has been a major part of this team for the majority of those years. I mean, 20 years is nothing to scoff at. And I would say PCSX2 would not be where it's at currently today without the involvement of Refraction. So with Refraction stepping away, I just wanted to raise a toast here to Refraction for everything he's done for PCSX2 and for the emulation community in general. So Refraction, if you end up seeing this video, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've done over the years. I wish you the best of success in your future endeavors here. And I know you've left PCSX2 in a very good state for the rest of the development team. I'm confident in the development team moving forward, and I can't wait to see what PCSX2 gets up to next. Now, it's also worth pointing out, although version 2.4.0 is the latest stable release, they have nightly releases, and this emulator gets updated incredibly frequently. I'd recommend checking out the latest nightly release here. At the time of filming, it's version 2.5.24. And speaking about stuff to give cheers to, next up we're talking about Stop Killing Games. And Stop Killing Games seems to have got a massive boost recently, and this is very promising for the overall campaign. Now, most of you who are a part of this channel are probably very familiar with Stop Killing Games. I mean, we've covered it in multiple videos. However, this channel is nowhere near the size of some of the big channels out there like Moist Critical or Penguin Zero, as well as Asmongold or even PewDiePie, and the recent push has really helped out the overall numbers. So here's the most recent post over on PewDiePie's YouTube channel. Thank you all for the amazing support on my recent videos. I love how I can just nerd out and share whatever with you guys. In the comments, I've seen some of you mention Stop Killing Games, and I want to say, I 100% support this movement. It ties in perfectly with what I talked about in my video, ownership over software, and the games we buy. Now, the last time we talked about this initiative was just a few days ago, and it had around 500,000 signatures, and now it's up to about 750,000. And I'm hoping here that it's going to hit 1.2 million by the end of the campaign, by the end of July. There's still a little bit of time left, and this extra popularity, I'm hoping, is going to get some good eyes on this petition. But moving on, and next up, we're talking about Windows emulation on Android with not Win Now, but Win Later. And there's a very interesting post over on Reddit emulation on Android that's been sent to me by a few different people here that I wanted to talk about real quick. So it says, Bruno released Vortek driver, now everyone can test it in Bionic. And I don't necessarily think this is real. So if we follow that link to GitHub, it brings us to a repository here called Winlator Bionic Vortek. And it's a fork of Winlator Bionic GLIBC, which is a fork of Winlator. So this is a fork of a fork. And it's called Vortek driver made by Bruno Dev 85. And I don't necessarily know if this is the case. Interestingly, this is claiming a bunch of different improvements. For example, bypassing turnip overhead. Vortek routes through the native Vulkan driver directly, avoiding MESA's translation layers, optimizing IPC model, aggressive compatibility hacks, and threaded command submission. Now, one of the reasons I'm skeptical about this is because I haven't seen it on the official Winlator GitHub. If you have, let me know in the comments below, and by all means, I have no issue updating with a correction. And taking a look here, I said it was a fork of a fork, but it's kind of more than that. So let's click on forked from GLIBC here. It brings me to another repository, and I'll click on that. And then I'll click on that, and we've got forks on even more forks. But we do end up at Winlator after a series of clicks through different forks. I don't think I need to say this, but there are a bunch of different forks of Winlator out there, and my recommendation is just to be careful and make sure you trust the developer and know what you're getting into. There have been reports of viruses in different forks. I mean, the main version of Winlator had an accidental virus in it as well. It has since been corrected. But there are some forks out there, forks upon forks, and it's a very interesting space, and some of this stuff is, I don't want to say malicious. It may have a good intent behind it, but it may not perform as well as the main version of Winlator. There is something interesting here, though, on a side note, and this is another fork of Winlator, and it's titled, The Winlator Controller Revolution is Coming. So this one is over on Coffin Colors GitHub page, and from my understanding, Coffin Colors is trustworthy. But they say here, are you ready to rumble or vibrate? Do you have friends, like up to 4? Are you tired of switching between D input and X input? Would it be great if every game just treated your controller like a real controller? No more remapping madness. Well, I have news for you. Very good news. Seriously, stay tuned. I'm curious to see what happens here, but I'm assuming a lot of people who use Winlator may be interested in this. Again, like everything we talk about, links are in the description below right at the bottom. And speaking about releases, next up we're talking about MAME, which stands for, well, there's two things it stands for, and one of them is multiple arcade machine emulation. The other one I can't necessarily put my finger on. Maybe you can let me know in the comments. But anyways, here, MAME version 0.278 or 278 has just launched. Now, I would say almost every single release of MAME is big in some way, shape, or form. It's usually a monthly release cycle, but this latest one is big in a very big way here. The big news is that the new sound system has arrived, and they say here native WAS API support on Windows and Pipewire support on Linux. Support for sound input for emulated systems that have microphones or other audio capture hardware. Support for multi-channel input and output. Built-in effects, including a parametric equalizer and dynamic range compressor. And better quality sample rate conversion and mixing and lower latency. It is worth pointing out here, they say as this is the first release of a major new component, it's going to be rough around the edges in some ways. Now, on top of that, obviously, there's even more stuff that's been improved here surrounding emulation. There's a bunch of new supported systems like Exidy, I think I said that right, and Taito arcade games from the 1970s. There's improvements for Sega Model 2 and Taito Type 0. There's also improvements to a whole bunch of Konami games and even more. If you're interested in MAME, I'd recommend checking out this changelog here because it is huge. There is a lot in here. And speaking about big releases, next up we're talking about Felix 86, which is a Linux user space emulator that allows you to run x86 and x86 64 programs on RISC V processors. and Felix 86 just got a big new update. So at the time of filming, the latest release of Felix 86 is version 25.07. They say this is their third release, and this is the first release of Felix 86 that can run AAA games like The Witcher 3 and Crysis. If you are interested in RISC V stuff in Felix 86, I'd recommend checking out their blog post because they detail everything they've done here and showcase the emulator in action. I think this is a super cool update. I think RISC V stuff is very interesting. Let me know your thoughts about Felix 86 in the comments below, especially if you use it. And continuing to talk about emulation, next up we're talking about Retrom. And for those who may be unaware, we've talked about Retrom a bunch on this channel. It's a centralized game library collection management service with a focus on emulation, configure once, play anywhere. So at the time of filming, Retrom version 0.7.28 is the latest update. And with this brand new update, there's now opt-in installation of games in standalone mode, and I will put quotes around installation. They say you can now configure standalone mode to require installing games as if they were hosted on a dedicated Retrom server. This is useful in cases where you are running standalone mode but accessing a library from a network drive. Installing in such cases ensures you have a truly local copy of your installed games. And speaking about games, next up we're talking about a system that, in my opinion, doesn't have a whole lot of exclusive games but seems to be selling well. And no, we're not talking about the PlayStation 5, we're talking about the Nintendo Switch 2. And Nintendo may have accidentally released some sales figures here that I would say are impressive. So Nintendo Switch 2 appears to have sold 5 million units in its first month. I've seen this information posted on a few different websites, but I think Nintendo Soup was one of the first people to see it after Nintendo accidentally posted it and removed it from their investor relations website. So they're saying here the Nintendo Switch 2 has sold 5 million units in its first 26 days. I would say that is incredibly impressive. They're saying here the original Switch sold 2.4 million units in its first month and took 4 months to reach 5 million. So Switch did what the Switch 2 did what the Switch did in 4 months. So what the Switch did in 4 months, the Switch 2 did in just 1. I'm very curious about this one and very surprised. Yes, I knew the Switch 2 was going to be a hot ticket item, but the Switch 2 has had a lot of controversy. We've covered a lot of it on this channel. From the LCD screen refresh rate controversy to the ban controversies to the pricing controversies. It seems nothing is really getting in the way of the Switch 2 selling. And speaking about Nintendo prices and the original Switch, well, if you're in Canada, like I am, you're probably not going to like this update. So this is being reported here as a Nintendo Switch pricing update. Unfortunately, I don't know the new prices of the Nintendo Switch in Canada, and I guess they will go into effect on August 1st. But it says here pricing for the original Nintendo Switch family of systems and products in Canada will change based on market conditions. These include the Nintendo Switch OLED, the Nintendo Switch, and the Nintendo Switch Lite, physical and digital Nintendo Switch games, and Nintendo Switch accessories. On top of that, it's also being reported that in Canada, the price of NSO is going up. And I would say it's going up by a significant margin. 1 month is going from basically $5 to $6. 3 months from $10 to $12 or $11.99 if you wanted to be specific. 12 months is going from $25 to basically $30. The family membership is going from $45 to $50 for 12 months. And the individual memberships here for NSO plus the expansion pack are going from $64 to $70, and the family one is going from $100 to $110. I'm not going to lie here, I am not happy with what I'm seeing so far for these rumored price increases, and I'm curious to see what the rest of the price increases are for the actual hardware and games. But this just seems par for the course in today's day and age. Everything just seems to be getting more and more expensive overall, and that just seems to be a global thing. But anyways, here it's just the Switch 2, in my opinion, is already super expensive, and I'm very disappointed to see the original Switch and Switch games and accessories and NSO prices going up. Happy Canada Day. And speaking about countries, next up we're jumping from Canada to Japan and talking about the Switch 2. And this is a headline over on Nintendo Soup. Japan users complain about overheating Nintendo Switch 2 consoles and noisy fans. Based on the article here and some tweets on the matter, it seems that the Nintendo Switch 2 is facing some overheating problems and some pretty excessive ones. So they say here, due to the excess heat, some users reported issues such as game freezes and crashes. Apparently, some of these overheated consoles had their fans going into overdrive in an attempt to expel the heat. Under normal circumstances, the system will automatically trigger sleep mode, with a warning message appearing on the screen when it detects excess heat. What's crazy here is this doesn't seem like it's localized to just one or two games, and maybe specific places in games that just generate quite a bit of heat due to rendering and all of that. It seems like it's affecting a bunch of different games and a bunch of different Switch 2s. They're saying games like Yakuza 0 and Cyberpunk 2077 and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Splatoon 2 and 3 are generating heat and causing issues with the hardware. What's even more interesting here, at least in my opinion, is this recommendation from Nintendo Soup. They recommend playing your Nintendo Switch 2 in a cool, well-ventilated environment to prevent issues like overheating. And they say that the hardware may not necessarily be the root cause of these issues. I find that very interesting for a number of reasons, but the big one here, you think Nintendo would have tested this in different climates to prevent this. But let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. I think we're going to have to wait and see as summer rolls on and temperatures begin to increase over here in North America to see if this is going to be a bigger problem that's more widespread, or if this is just localized to Japan for some reason. Next up, we're switching from Nintendo and talking about Steam. Now, we've talked about this one when it was a part of the Steam Client beta, and now it's part of the Steam Client stable version, and that's the new Steam in-game performance monitor. If you're interested in checking out your FPS as well as your CPU and GPU utilization, you might be excited about this update. Now, I don't know about you, but for monitoring CPU and GPU usage, I used to have a whole bunch of different methods. One of those, for example, if you were on Windows, is using the Task Manager. On Linux, there's also a bunch of different ways. But anyways, here, enabling this seems to be super simple and straightforward, and it's right in the in-game overlay menu. And speaking about good news, next up, we're talking about Fedora. And we had talked about Fedora just the other day when they had that controversial proposal to drop 32-bit support. That proposal generated, in my opinion, a lot of bad press, a lot of negativity, and obviously a lot of controversy, as it would affect a lot of gamers. In fact, Bazite, a huge distribution based on Fedora, had said they might as well shut the project down if Fedora drops 32-bit support, as Steam relies on 32-bit. And it seems that Fedora has withdrawn that proposal. So Gaming on Linux here has a great article on the matter with some very relevant links, and I'd recommend checking it out for more information. But I guess this is from Fedora, and they say, given feedback in this thread and to a lesser extent also on the mailing list, I have decided to withdraw this proposal. It is clear that Fedora 44 target for this change was too early, and I couldn't agree more. Will this change be good later on? Probably, but right now it's way too early. Now, the person from Fedora goes on to say here, I am disappointed in some of the reactions this proposal has received, with some of the people apparently reading it in the most uncharitable way. It was a proposal that tried to address technical problems that package managers and release engineering is facing, not some conspiracy to break gaming use case. That said, I was expecting a lot of feedback on this one, but not hundreds of people shouting, don't do this, why don't you care about your users? I will switch distros immediately levels of feedback, though to some degree I also blame clickbait, tech press, or YouTubers for that. That is a very interesting paragraph. Now, I don't know about you, but I would say that's almost gaslighting at this point. I mean, I could be wrong with that statement, but realistically here, if Fedora did this, if they did drop 32-bit support, it would have huge repercussions for gamers. And if a distribution that's widely loved, like Bazite, I mean, I even use that distribution. If that stopped, that would have huge repercussions in the gaming world. So I don't necessarily think any of the tech articles or YouTubers had done clickbait to really boost popularity of this. I think boosting popularity of this proposal was a very good thing. Now, I don't know about you, but I think there was a better way to handle this response. I think that last paragraph is going to put a bad taste in some people's mouths, and I think it kind of antagonizes some people. I think this may have been just better if they said, yeah, you know what, the proposal was a little bit too early. We realized that based on the feedback, and we might propose this later on again down the road, but not right now. And I think a lot of people would have been happy with that response. But introducing that, in my opinion, unnecessary paragraph at the end, it's not a good look in my opinion. But I don't know here. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Maybe I'm off base and out in left field on this one. Maybe the cheersing stuff has gotten to my head and I'm not thinking clearly. Who knows? I mean, I'm using Fedora as one of my main Linux distributions because of the likes of stuff like Nobara and Bazite. Both of those distributions have really opened my eyes to the world of Fedora and what it's capable of. I usually recommend stuff like Mint if you like an easy set it and forget it distro, or something like Pop! OS, or Endeavour OS if you want to go down the Arch Avenue. But anyways here, Fedora with Bazite and Nobara has been really exciting for me. And I think Fedora would be wise to listen to very popular gaming distros like that. Or maybe I'm off base with that because gaming is kind of niche. But maybe I'm not. Let me know your thoughts. And speaking about hot topics, next up we're talking about Nexusmods. And I don't need to get into a lot of details here, but this is the latest blog post over on Nexusmods. The law and adult content, and things are going to change. So they say here, due to the Online Safety Act and Digital Services Act, we are required as a UK-based company to ensure we continue to remove illegal content and add additional restrictions to children's access to certain adult content. As a business, this leaves us with a choice: remove adult content for all UK and EU-based users, or make adjustments to our policy, including adding age verification for some adult content. So they say here, for UK and EU-based users, in the future we will be introducing age verification for the majority of adult content hosted on the site. And for everyone else, you will not be subject to age verification. And this is because of law, not something that Nexusmods just decided to do for no reason. And continuing to talk about hot topics, last up here we're talking about SNK and some Android games. And SNK is going to be delisting a number of games from Google Play. So they say here, from the end of June 2025, I guess today's July 1st, so these games are already delisted, a number of SNK titles will be leaving Google Play. And that is Blazing Star, Metal Slug 2, and Metal Slug X, Fatal Fury Special, Mark of the Wolves, King of Fighters 97, 98, and Samurai Showdown 2. And this to me is super unfortunate. Additionally, in my opinion, this gets even worse. The above titles will be unavailable for download from Google Play after discontinuation, and customers who have already purchased and installed these titles can continue using them, but will not be able to reinstall them or download them on another device. That is really, really unfortunate. Now, I don't necessarily think that the Google Play Store versions of these games were the most optimal way to play these on mobile, but at the same time here, I'm disappointed to see that these are being delisted and also blocked from being re-downloaded. And they say here Metal Slug 3 left Google Play on June 2nd. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.